Necromancy. Even the word today conjures up images of evil magicians lurking in graveyards stealing bones for their dark magic.
Hey!
In fact, the Greek word for necromancy actually comes from the Greek word nekro, meaning dead, and the later medieval term manteia, meaning mancy or divination. So it is quite literally divination of the dead. Necromancy today is almost synonymous with like evil or dark arts, but not many know that the word itself actually originates from ancient Greek. In popular culture today, in things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Dungeons and Dragons, necromancers are almost always seen as the antagonists, but where did this idea of evil magic come from if this was just a divinatory tradition in ancient Greece? But this was just a divinatory tradition in ancient Greece, and in fact, we can trace necromancy all the way back to the beginning of recorded human history. There's a long-standing tradition going all the way back to Mesopotamia of people using skull caps for divination. Occasionally, they would bring skulls themselves back to life, and the answers would be the skull clattering, yes or no. Totally wish I could try that. Closest we can get is this guy right here. In ancient Greece, the spirits of the dead were said to possess qualities that regular humans didn't have, like the ability to foretell the future. Since they weren't in this life anymore, they were seen as existing outside of this life, and it gave them foresight. This practice was especially common in Proto-Greece, Mycenaean Greece, or the ancient Greece of ancient Greece. In fact, Odysseus himself, the Odysseus from the Odyssey, that is, was said to have practiced nekromanteia. And there's a whole chapter dedicated with Odysseus communicating and asking the dead questions. This process of conjuring the dead was called a nekia or a nekia. It was a way to kind of call up spirits, be like, hello. Some may have heard of a katabasis, a physical, literal journey to the underworld, but a nekia was not the same thing. A nekia, you were calling spirits up from the underworld versus actually going down there yourself, which sounded a lot more unpleasant. Orpheus can attest to the unpleasantness of journeying to the underworld. In the Odyssey, Circe the witch, or Circe the sorceress, badass, by the way, fucking love her, turn men into pigs, as she should. Odysseus travels to the underworld in his own katabasis in order to gain insight on his journey home by using spells that Circe herself taught him. So he is performing literal what people would call dark magic. And in the story, Odysseus wishes to evoke the spirit of Tiresias the seer, a well-known mystic who had died years prior, who was able to foretell the future even when he was still alive. Great guy to be calling up for questions. However, he is unable to summon the spirit without the assistance of others. These nekromanteions, these houses of the dead, were built at special locations believed to be entrances to the underworld. It's interesting that actual physical locations that supposedly are entrances to the underworld exist. Like, I would love personally to use some of these ancient sources to try to locate where one of these could have been, because if they were physical locations, I feel like maybe they would have had like a temple or something around there. It's very interesting. It kind of reminds me of Pluto's Gate that was found in Turkey recently, this entrance to the underworld that scholars thought was not real for hundreds of years, that these writers referenced. And we found it. However, it was an entrance to the underworld, but the cave itself was so full of toxic gas, 1 foot inside, 1 breath of air, you'd be dead. You would be dead on the floor. So in a way, it was an entrance to the underworld, just perhaps not the one that we expected. I am certainly not going to be the one to test that. The Nekromanteion, or the Oracle of the Dead in this context, was said to be located at the point of 3 of 5 rivers in Hades. Do not judge me on my pronunciations. I am from the Midwest. We don't even know how to say internet. As people made their journeys to these locations, they were surrounded by pits of seeping sulfur believed to be emanations of the underworld, aiding in visions, purifications, and the overall overwhelming feeling of descending into Hades. Look, I'm not the first one to say it, but they were definitely getting blitzed off of those fumes. At the very least, a little bit of anoxia, like asphyxiation. Can't imagine sulfuric gas is particularly good for your brain. I would also probably think if I was journeying alone in a cave in the dark thousands of years ago with all this noxious gas surrounding me that I was too heading to the underworld to my demise. Just, huffing that good shit, you know? That rare Mount Vesuvius Zaza. However, before pilgrims were allowed to enter the Nekromanteion, they had to undergo a series of purifications, some of which proved to be deadly. Firstly, they had to be washed in a river after having their body rubbed down head to toe in olive oil. Then they were required to sleep outside in a lodge for 3 days and only eat a specialized ritual diet, a meal consisting of broad beans, pork, barley bread, oysters, and a narcotic compound. I have changed my mind. Where can you sign me up for this? They were given white linen robes with a red sash, the red linen or wool believed to represent a catharmoi barrier. The impure and dead could not cross. This was seemingly connected to the representation of living blood. The deadly part were the elixirs they were required to have before entering on the 3rd day. The water of forgetfulness and the water of memory. There were traces of poisons, hallucinogens, and opiates, the aforementioned narcotic compound. Probably opium. The ancient Greeks had such a thing for opium. It was in almost everything to do with religious and magical connotation. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the drink that the members of the Eleusinian Mysteries would drink before descending in their katabasis, their journey to the underworld, during their initiations, the kakeion. It's this barley oat, disgusting, bitter wine, but it has ergot in it, you know, the main compound of acid. So they were definitely having a journey. It is great to note that most pilgrims survived this. Most, which is maybe not too great, because that means some didn't make it. Could you imagine dying from something like the water of forgetfulness just KOing you? Just be built different. And then they were allowed to enter after leaving proper offerings at the entrance of the Nekromanteion, including a sacrifice of sheep. A small libation was made, an offering of milk at the entrance to the chthonic gods and to the dead in a bronze vessel. And then some more offerings were given, such as Baal amphoras, hydrai, alabastroi, lekithoi, or even small animals and birds. Especially fowls, don't ask me why, probably just really easy to get, as well as shells. Down through what was known as the Lake of Memory in the deeper part of the Nekromanteion, pilgrims boated over a river representing Styx, the river Styx, to the inner sanctum where the séance would take place. We will be doing our own little version of a séance, as this kind of necromancy inspired later Victorian Spiritualism and their popularized versions of séances. One could even technically consider a Ouija board a version of necromancy. Picture the tunnels from the Phantom of the Opera, you know, the ones that are all like those underwater vault looking things with the high ceilings and the river and the creepy ferryman. It was a lot like that, and I am actually living for it. Like, let me live there, please. Pilgrims expected to see the images of the dead as shadows against the flickering lantern light of oil lamps as the wailing moaning of the restless echoed in the cavern. The faithful pilgrims would descend through a chthonic series of meandering, confusing, twisting corridors, leaving offerings as they passed through 3 iron gates symbolic of Hades. Once they entered the main sanctum, the oracle had 3 dogs around herself, representing the 3 heads of the guardian Kerberos. There, pilgrims would give an offering of mistletoe to the goddess Persephone for safety in the main sanctum. Honestly, look, having the queen of the underworld on your side is not a bad idea at all. If I was journeying to the literal underworld, I would want Persephone's help. There's actually a full account of Nekromanteia from the Odyssey. The oldest account of necromancy we actually have comes from the Odyssey, where Odysseus was instructed by the witch Circe to dig a sacrificial pit in which he would sacrifice the blood of animals and concoct a libation to the dead. Thus solemn rites and holy vows we paid to all phantom nations of the dead. Then died the sheep, a purple torrent flowed, and all the caverns smoked with streaming blood, when lo appeared along the dusky coasts thin, airy shoals of visionary ghosts, fair, pensive youths and soft-enamored maids, and withered elders, pale and wrinkled shades, ghastly with wounds, the forms of warriors slain, stalked with majestic port, a martial train. These and 1,000 more swarmed o'er the ground, and all the dire assembly shrieked around. Astonished at the sight, aghast I stood, and a cold fear ran shivering through my blood. Straight I command the sacrifice to haste, straight the flayed victims to the flames are cast, and muttered vows and mystic song applied to grisly Pluto and his gloomy bride. The Odyssey, Book 11. The word nekromanteion means oracle of the dead, but it is also used to refer to Odysseus during his katabasis, or his journey into the underworld. And today it is used to refer to nekromanteions, or these underground chambers in which nekromanteia is performed. And look, you've probably heard of Greeks and their labyrinths, or at least the Minoans and their labyrinths. But once the pilgrims had finished in the sanctum, they had to wander through a labyrinth. Yes, in the caves. Presumably in the dark. This labyrinth actually represented Hades as a way to protect you from spirits trying to follow you out. Just try to picture here for a second. You are a pilgrim who's traveled thousands of miles, likely, by foot probably, or by horse, for days, maybe weeks, maybe even months, to come see an oracle of the dead, a nekromanteion. You've drank this narcotic compound that is probably making you somewhat hallucinate. You were breathing in this sulfuric gas, also probably making you hallucinate and probably really sick. You're going down through this dark, terrifying tunnel, and once you've talked to an oracle of the dead themselves, they've probably given you some horrifying answers, or strangely accurate ones. You then try to ascend, and you are going through this terrifying maze with ghosts trying to follow you out of the underworld. This sounds absolutely horrifying. Why isn't there a movie about this yet? Like, stop making shitty remakes and make something about this, please. It sounds a lot like an ancient version of a haunted house. It's also interesting to note that it is said it is critical to not look behind you during this journey. I am looking at you, Orpheus. The writer Herodotus gives us an account of necromancy with the legendary Periander, the Corinthian tyrant. Now, a little warning on this next story, it's pretty gross. It's probably a lot more gross than what you assume it's gonna be. According to the story, the tyrant wished to communicate with his recently deceased wife because she had taken a bunch of his money and buried it, and he wanted to know where it was. When Periander's representatives consulted her, conjured her, the spirit of Melissa, his wife, Melissa refused to reveal the location of the hidden money. Queen behavior, love her. Do not tell that asshole where you hid all his money. Confused specifically because he had failed to burn her clothes when she died, leaving her cold in the underworld. Now, according to other sources, it was because he had buried her in her least favorite dress, and she wanted him to burn a bunch of clothes so she would have better ones in the afterlife. And honestly, fucking queen behavior. Blackmailing your husband from the grave, pretty badass. We don't talk enough about Melissa. To prove her identity, Melissa mentioned something only her husband knew of, and she said this in front of a whole bunch of other people, his servants, his advisors, the people who had helped conjure her. Melissa said, and I quote, "Unfortunately, he had put his loaf in her cold oven." He had put his loaf in her cold oven. And look, these are the points that I try to not laugh when researching ancient history, because the phrasing is very interesting. It paints a very strong picture, a very unfortunately strong picture. Anyways, look, when Periander heard this, remember he was this big scary tyrant, he immediately got terrified that everyone would find out that he had porked his dead wife. So terrified of her possible vengeance from beyond the grave, and his little secret getting out, he immediately commanded all the clothes in the village to be burned for her. So there's another method of divination with the dead, of nekromanteia in ancient Greece, and it actually involves these little ceramic lamps. You've probably seen them. I'm gonna put a picture up on screen because I don't know where mine is right now. Here you go, right here. Imagine it right here. You don't have to imagine it, it's right there. The diviner uses the lamp as a means of attracting spirits to the flames. This practice is called lapidomancy, which is really hard to say because I keep wanting to say lapdomancy, but it's lapadomancy. Lampadomancy? probably lampadamancy. Anyways, it's divination using an oil lamp, okay? You get a bowl of water, you get an oil lamp, conjure the dead, and we will be testing it out. So we're doing a ritual conjuration of the dead in Nicaea, and I'm working from the Greek magical papyri. I will be doing spell XIV 459 to 75, the words of the lamp, since we will be speaking to an ancient oil. That is the lovely oil lamp. I know it's covered in oil, I'm sorry. Okay. Once I begin the incantations, they generally cannot be stopped, and we have to wear pure white linen to be purified before the spirits.
Both the they on taka iloe ion perife come down to the light of this lamp, appear to this youth and ask for me about that which I am asking here today. Iaiolo therentho pishkimea kilo black fun sampla yerai barbarathai arpon gainaf Brisentano fry, hiei garhai, balmenthrai, many bar ekai guy, aye, kek, brin skalma, arian sarba, messengrif, niptimech, Marco haram, o ilan kek, brimayen uyoth, sengen by, goigai, laikaham, arimioth. I adjure you, the restless, by the light of this lamp. Please come forth.
This starts spurting flame, and sometimes they appear in the mirror. Sometimes the flame will spurt from the center for a yes.
How do you feel about being on camera?
How do you feel about this? This didn't...
That looks like a positive.
Yeah.
He
He died, I mean, he died in the 80s, so he knows what a camera is. Do you not want to move on? Yeah, no, he does not want to. I don't blame him after that. Are you having a good afterlife? That looks like a yes. Do the dead often try to contact the living? No, it's not common.
Is your mic on?
Yeah. That's interesting.
Heard it
Thumping. I can hear it thumping. It sounded like knocking. See the smoke coming up? That can be an answer to yes occasionally, especially if it swirls around like that. Hello. Today we are going to be using the Ouija board to try to show you how Victorian spiritualists used to, featuring my cousin dressed as a Victorian spiritualist. Was that on purpose?
No, I just look like this all the time.
I will be showing you how to properly open a board as well. Not a lot of people know how to. We first open with H-E-L-L-O. Hello. You definitely want to reach out to a spirit that you've already worked with or that is related to you. In this case, I prefer to use the Ouija board to communicate with demons. Definitely not Victorian. They were much preferred with the dead, but I also find it has better answers. We can start with one of maybe my grandfather.
Okay.
Okay. J-O-H. And I actually am at a loss for...
I want to ask, what's the most interesting job you've ever had or done? Whichever. Dr. U.G. Dr. Ugg. The most interesting thing you've ever done. So it's a or is...
Let's do some silly questions because I can't post that on YouTube.
Yeah, it's very cool though.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask him more about that one later.
Would you like to talk to us again sometime? Awesome. Okay. Is there anything really funny that you can tell us? Maybe about the funniest thing that ever happened to you. A D U L T R E A D. Adult read.
Adult reading. Man, maybe it's not appropriate for a wider audience. Oh.
Okay. Do you mind if we say goodbye and talk to you again later?
B Y E. Okay. Aw.
Goodbye, Grandpa.
Goodbye, Grandpa. Never, ever, ever leave a planchette on the board. It's like leaving your front door open. And again, what's a really good idea to use with a Ouija board that the Victorians definitely would not have approved of? Talking to demons. They're very chatty. I'm gonna call up King Payman. You may know him from Hereditary.
You may know him from King Payman.
From King Payman. Also from the Ars Goetia. That's the guy. HELLOKING. And yes, you always have to spell out his title.
Yes. Epithets always with him.
IMON.
He's already dragging it to his own name, I
I
think.
know, I can feel it. He knows like everything. We could ask him literally anything. What happened to Amelia Earhart?
E. F.
A.
L.
Well, I would have assumed so, yes. Could you specify? T. H. E. P. If he's L.
I knew it.
A.
N.
E. F. E. L.
L.
The plane fell. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
What's the worst
Yes.
movie, in your opinion?
Yes.
A. B. R. E. M. L. I. N.
Abramelin?
Abramlin. Like,
I don't know. Is that a movie?
is
Do you
that
want
a
me to?
movie?
I'm gonna go get my phone.
Google
yeah.
it real quick. I need to know. Isn't a Bremlin like a Bremlin the mage? I need to know if it's a movie.
I do too. I need to look this up.
Come here.
Oh, the Book of Abramelin is a book.
I know it's a book. It's a book
Yeah.
on magic. Is there a movie?
Yeah, I wonder. Movie, there is.
Oh my god, wait, I have to see it. There's a fucking movie.
A Dark Song in 2016. Okay, I'm gonna get on the camera and say this. Came out in 2016. The ritual performed in the movie is the Abramelin operation, an occult rite attempted by Gnostics such as Aleister Crowley, of
Doesn't
course.
he hate Crowley?
He must.
So
Shocking to
funny
me.
that this is like an actual
A Dark
thing.
Song. Okay, so apparently he thinks that A Dark Song is the worst movie he's ever seen and it causes him great pain.
Thank you, King Payman.
Thank you, King Payman.
Right.
We love you, King Payman.
G-O-O-D-B-Y-E. We love you, King
We
Payman.
love you, King Payman.
All right, and that's how you close a board. The
I
Victorian.
love you, King Payman.
You're like
my
one of those
babies.
fangirls in the
Yes.
crowd.